Hello again, or hello for the first time. This is a carryover video from the last one where I was talking about warranties and also terms and conditions with my websites and what I do for that. This one is about security. I was asked, do I have experience with securing my websites and do I secure my websites? So let's talk about security on the websites that I build. Now, I'm not going to give away all my secrets and what I use specifically, because to me this sort of is giving a little bit of a handbook on how to get in to my sites by simply looking at that software. But it is a lot of generalized software. I don't go overboard with security. I could go a little bit harder with it, but I don't, simply because of convenience. There's a point in my business where if I went a little bit more overboard with security, I would be putting more time onto the things that I do. So I don't go for things like two-factor authentication and too many things that make me have to work too hard to access the websites. But I do add security into my websites. So I build Joomla CMS websites. Also, its best competitor is WordPress. So Joomla and WordPress are probably the two main commonly used open source CMS out there. If I'm talking about Joomla, then I'm also referring to WordPress as well, because they're sort of the same open source software that anybody can go in, have a look at the code and try to find ways to crack the code, break into the code and get access to your websites. So I'm not a hacker, so I don't know where are the best spots and how to access. I'm really just relying on other people's knowledge of security within the Joomla CMS or WordPress. There's lots of good software out there to monitor your website, and all the security things that I've learned in the past have been through trolling through forums and looking for best practice guides to set up your Joomla or your WordPress site. There's a lot of common sense things. There's good use of passwords. There is HT access limitations. There's software that monitors the change of important files within your websites. There is software that can scan all the files and look for any sort of compromised files within your website. So there's a lot of different software out there. But the thing that you really should do is just troll through the forums. There'll be heaps of software out there for best practices for security on WordPress and Joomla sites. So back about 5 years ago, I was using Joomla 1.5. So it was an early version of Joomla, and I didn't want to move up to Joomla 2.5 because it was a whole new learning process. So I was a little bit lazy like that. Now, I paid for this in the end, and also the hosting company that I used, they also didn't want to take their PHP version up to a higher limit because it would break a lot of the sites they had on there. So they had an old version of PHP on there, plus all of these Joomla 1.5 sites that I had as well. So what happened? Naturally, somebody went through, found a compromise with the software that's being used, HelloCat, and they got through, and I think they had about 50 sites up at the time, and every one of those sites was hacked. Okay. The same hack, granted, so it really wasn't too bad. And I went through a process of uploading all my backups onto the site. And then at this stage, I did realize as well that I wasn't really diligent with all of my backups. So there were some sites which really hadn't had a backup since development stage, and they were old to start with. So I did learn a really big lesson in that. That was a lot of work. And if you have a lot of websites, this sort of stuff can cripple you because you will spend nothing but time answering calls for a start, because if a client's website goes down, you generally get a call if they're pretty active with their website. If 50 clients' websites go down, you don't get a piece of work done until you've answered the calls. And eventually what you start doing is just not answering calls and trying to fix all of the websites. So ever since that day, I have made sure that I've used best practices on all my administration locations, all of HT access, server securities, hosting server securities, and also monitoring all of my software in the Joomla sites, looking for changes and everything like that. So I do have a really good system in place, and I really haven't been hacked. No, I don't have a site that's been hacked since I've made a good effort to lock down all of my websites. Now I'm going to take the next question on here, which is sort of how I was asked, how complex are my websites that I make? Let's do this as I love doing in percentages. So I would say about 70% of my websites are pretty straightforward small business websites where they break down into a very simple pattern, and that pattern is a structured home page with a hero image and then call to action buttons, leads, whatever on the front, plus services, plus a breakdown of what their business is, all on the home page. And then through that they have the About Us, they have the services they provide. They also could have some sort of database showing their projects that they've done in the past. So these are the standard sort of, with the Contact Us page, these are the standard sort of websites that I build. So there's not really a lot of thought that goes into, well, no, not a lot of thought, but there's not really a lot of work that goes into the content and the structuring of these websites, because they are pretty formulated. And because they are formulated like this, then it makes it really easy to make a process map or a process layout of what you do every single time. And then also get the stuff to your client to say, please provide me with this information. So if it doesn't stray too left or right from the normal, then you can make up these great processes and put them in place and make everything very easy for yourself and earn a little bit of money out of this sort of business. As far as the more complex sites go, well, I do have some more complex sites that pop up, and more clients that really want specific things done for them. They have their business that has a certain way of working and a certain process about it, and they want their website to help streamline that process. So these sort of projects are bigger and they're harder to quote for, and you don't have that same sort of workflow that happens with your general small business website. But luckily, and sort of luckily, because you do make more money out of the more complex websites, but that's only because you're working harder, you're working longer hours. Also, in these more complex websites, what can happen is you spend a little bit of time problem solving and trying to do something. Because if you haven't done it before, but you know it can be done, then there's a case of working out client communication, everything like that. So it does take a lot more work to do these. Therefore, you get more money for them. So really it's a case of, do you want the easy work, which is the small business stuff, very formulated, very easy to do, or do you want to continually do this harder work all the time and get more money from it? It weighs itself out, because sometimes it's very stressful to take on bigger, more complex jobs than it is easier jobs. And sometimes it's just really nice to have a walk in the park easy job that you know you're going to do a good job with, and you don't have to work that hard to do because you've done so many of them before. Make sure that you have a step-by-step breakdown of what's going to happen for this more complex site that you're building. Even if you have to set it into modules and different modules. Now, this is a little bit out of my comfort zone because I'm not a programmer. I basically am a front-end web developer, and I look for pre-existing software to solve a job. If I get something that is so unique that I need to have a programmer to do, generally I won't take on that job. Because I don't have an in-house programmer that can do all this sort of stuff, I would have to outsource it, and I find outsourcing to be a little bit difficult, because then you're starting to do a group thing and you're trying to talk to the client and then talk to the programmer to get each one to do something. And I've generally come out worse off trying to do those bigger projects. So just know your limitations when you're doing these sort of projects. So I hope that's been helpful to you in some way. That's it for now. Do the usual: subscribes, likes, dislike. See you next time.